Hi guys, welcome back. We're here to catch up on the Lost Bookshop. And if you hear purring or whatever, my cat's right here. She wanted to be in here with me. It's like literally the last few days before moving. I'm drinking the new Alani cotton candy and it's really good. But anyway, okay. So we left off on page 149, chapter 21, Henry. I'm following a new lead. The sigh on the other end of the line was not open to interpretation. I'm just wondering, is all this really worth it? Said Isabel. I gave my own version of the frustrated sigh. She had no idea. How could she? I've been cryptic about my research for so long that she'd lost interest in asking. It's worth it to me. Fine. Well, I suppose there's no point in me saying that I miss you. It hardly seems relevant to you. Of course it's relevant. I mean, miss you too, Izzy. And there it was, my first lie. Or rather, the first lie that I was blindingly aware of, like staring into the sun and seeing the worst part of yourself eclipsed. I didn't want to be that kind of person who simply told someone what they wanted to hear. But I didn't know what the truth was anymore. Or maybe I did, but I didn't know what to do about it. I was stalling. Did that make me a bad person? Your mother called. What? My mother called you? Yes, Henry. She's going to be my future mother-in-law, if we ever get married, that is. I gulped. She said your father's checked himself into rehab. I'm not sure how many seconds passed by. Henry, are you there? I cleared my throat. It felt thick with something I was determined to suppress. Yep, I'm still here. Well, aren't you going to say anything? This was typical of my mother, using someone else to deliver the news she should have told me herself. I hated her and pitied her at the same time. She was always hiding behind someone or something. Perhaps she was ashamed of the whole thing. I know I was. What is there to say? Am I supposed to be impressed? He'll sober up for a fortnight. Maybe 3 weeks at a stretch. Then just when we're starting to believe that he's changed, he won't come home one night. And that'll be the last we hear from him for another few years. It's always the same. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I made a fist on my hand and smacked my forehead. What was I thinking saying this stuff to her? No, I'm sorry. You shouldn't be caught in the middle of this. I'll have a word with Mom, and I'll be home soon. I promise. I spent 20 minutes trying to schmooze the archivist at Princeton University on my phone. My definition of schmoozing was leaning heavily on my British accent and hoping that made me sound important. As it turned out, my schmoozing skills were either rusty from lack of use or highly overestimated by me. Sir, you are welcome to visit the reading rooms here. Simply make an appointment. Yes, I understand that. It's just not fiscally feasible to make that kind of journey at the moment, I said for the third time. As much as I would have loved a trip to New York, I could hardly afford the bed and breakfast as it was. Is there any chance you could, have a little look through Sylvia Beach's letters for any correspondence with an Opaline Carlyle? So you want me to drop everything I'm doing and do your research for you? Is that correct, Mr. Field? No, when you say it like that, as I said, you can submit an online request like everybody else to consult the special collections. Yes, but time is of the essence. It is, Mr. Field. My time is of the essence, and I have spent as much as I'm willing to on this phone call. Goodbye. I stared at my phone. I think that went rather well, I told myself, and grabbed my wallet off the bed. When I got to the front gate of the university, I saw her. Fancy meeting you here, I said, and wished I'd thought of anything more original to say. Thankfully, she didn't notice. Her face looked paler than usual, and her eyes were bloodshot. Had she been crying? Is everything okay? Yeah, fine. People were bumping into us as she stood motionless before the entrance. Are you going in? Her eyes darted about nervously, then she shook her head. I don't know what I'm doing, to be honest. Well, let's just step out of the way, I suggested, hooking my arm through hers and guiding her to a quiet corner inside the quadrangle. I don't know what I'm doing here. I think I've changed my mind, she said, looking around with wide eyes like a trapped animal. Can I help at all? It was clear that she wasn't even listening to me. Her mind was elsewhere. I thought my mother was ill. I can't speak to her on the phone, and my father won't answer my calls. Not since she broke off. Not since she left her abusive husband. What kind of family would do that? I texted my brother. He said she was fine. Must have been a misunderstanding. That's good news. I couldn't understand what was going on, but she was clearly upset about it. Fancy a walk? You'd be saving me from a boring afternoon in the library. This was a blatant lie. Libraries were anything but boring to me, but I knew it. It's what people said sometimes, and to my relief, she nodded. I didn't really know where we were going, but sensed that it mattered little to her, as long as it was quiet. We wandered off the main thoroughfare and down the quieter streets with independent shops and honest cafes. I found the Holy Grail, a secondhand bookshop with a tea room upstairs called Tomes and Tea. I waited until she had a pot of tea and a scone with extra jam in front of her before I spoke again. We're friends, right? She nodded non-committedly, towering a spoon of light cream on top of her scone. And friends can tell each other stuff. No judgment. Henry, But they can also not tell each other stuff, but still lean on the other person, if they want to. So what I'm saying is the most ham-fisted manner ever recorded in history is, whether you want to tell me or not, that's up to you, but I'm here either way. Until you find your manuscript. Yes, well, she could see right through me. I had nothing to offer her. Even this olive branch of friendship was a flimsy substitute for how I really felt. If we're being honest, I can't understand why you would propose to someone and then immediately hop on a flight to another country searching for something that probably doesn't even exist. That was not the kind of honesty I had in mind. You're hardly in any position to lecture me on my love life, I flung back, then immediately regretted it. I didn't mean... Her chair screeched on the floor as she got up. Her eyes were burning with hurt and maybe even hatred. I hated myself. What a stupid comment. I ran down the stairs behind her, quietly asking her to wait without wanting to attract attention. Walking through the bookshop, she happened to step into an anteroom by mistake, and it was just the two of us, alone. Please, Martha, I'm so sorry. I wasn't thinking. It was a stupid throwaway comment. She was looking towards the ceiling, trying to stop the tears from falling. It doesn't matter. I shouldn't have said those things. I was being unkind. You are right, I said, stepping closer. I did run away from Isabel. Not consciously, perhaps, but I found a way to not be there. I don't know, I said, breaking my hand through my hair. I thought it was what I wanted, and then I just freaked out. The shelves of books around us muffled the outside world. Wisp of blonde hair fell about her face, and her red cheeks glowed with the turmoil of emotion. She bit her lip and leaned back against a bookshelf, considering her words. Love is scary. Someone should write that book. She smiled and looked directly into my eyes as though trying to decide something. Are you in love? Such a simple question, but coming from her, in this context, I didn't know what the answer was. Did I know what love was supposed to feel like? Had I ever been in love? There was the initial attraction, then a kind of comfortableness, followed by a sense of, what? Unease? Like I knew all along that I had chosen the most sensible path and now resented every step I took upon it. As though I'd signed up for the wrong course in university and with each passing day was feeling more and more trapped. Looking over my shoulder for the life I would have had and never really being present in my own life. She gave up, waiting for an answer. I'm starting to think maybe love isn't supposed to be scary. Maybe I didn't love Shane at all. I thought I did, but that's the trap, isn't it? Fooling yourself into believing that it's your fault for not doing it right. But if I'd known it wasn't really love, I would have left sooner. She wasn't talking to me anymore, although her words rang true for me. It sounded like a conversation she had many times with herself. I thought that's what love was, sticking by someone no matter what, waiting for the person I'd fallen in love with at the start to come back. I wanted to reach out to her, hold her, but I wasn't sure if it was the right thing to do. How could he hurt you? I whispered, seeing the little girl inside of her that just wanted to be loved. Not beaten, black and blue. She looked up at me with an expression that was completely unguarded. I didn't overthink this time and reached out to touch her cheek, brushing the tears away. She let her face be held, and I could feel her melting into me. Before I knew it, she was in my arms, her head buried in the space between my shoulder and my chest. We didn't speak any more words. It felt as though the books were protecting us, and I hoped the moment would go on forever. My fingers lost in tangles of her hair as I caressed the back of her neck. Christ, I said eventually, unsure if I had spoken aloud or not, until she pulled back and looked up at me. What is it? I searched for words that wouldn't scare her off or make me sound like an idiot. I really like you, like a lot, and I don't know what to do about it. Her solemn expression slowly broke into a smile, and then she laughed. Oh, thanks for that, I said sarcastically, still with my arms around her. I think I like you a lot too, and I don't know what to do about it either. That turned out to be untrue, because she did, in fact, know what to do about it. She slowly tilted her head upwards and, looking into my eyes all the while, moved her head closer to mine until our lips touched. To say that I saw fireworks would have been an exaggeration, but to say that I felt fireworks in my entire network of blood vessels would have been 100% accurate. I bent my head and kissed her as though it was the first time I had ever kissed anyone. It felt brand new. We fit perfectly together. Her fingertips skated from my chest up along my jawline and then through my hair. I pulled her hips closer to mine and heard her sigh. I stopped for a moment and spoke, my own voice hardly recognizable as it had dropped to the husky octave of Barry White. Is this okay? She nodded, and then her lips were back on mine. I don't know how long we stood there. It could have been 20 minutes or 20 seconds before a customer came in and cleared his throat loudly. While silently vowing to murder him in his sleep, I found Martha's hand and curled mine around it. Do you want to come back to mine? There's something I have to do first, she said as she dragged me out of the shop, making a run for it. Where are we going? Trinity. I have 5 minutes left to register for my course. Chapter 22, Opening. England, 1922. My trip began as planned with a visit to the Bronte Society, merely to stand where the Bronte sisters had stood. To look out to the moors that inspired Emily's writing was such a touching experience. The house itself stood like a fortress, its gray brick tempered by the large sash windows. I tried to imagine what it would have been like to live there, daughters of a fervently religious man, pressed up against the wilds of such an unyielding landscape. Young women, spinsters like myself, ignored by the world of men and literature, pouring their heart and passion into their writing and taking on the male pseudonyms of Currer, Ellis, and Acton Bell. I stood there in Mr. Fitzpatrick's trousers and a long overcoat, similarly at odds with the constraints of our gender. It was also a disguise, in case Lyndon had his spies out. After Patrick Bronte's death, the entire contents of the house were either auctioned off or gifted to those who worked at Haworth. The Society was fortunate enough to have acquired much of these effects, and their archives were quite impressive. I came across poems by Emily, annotated by elder sister Charlotte, immediately giving me the impression of a sibling power struggle, albeit a loving one. It was common knowledge that Charlotte was critical of her younger sister's masterpiece. In the preface to the 1850 edition of Wuthering Heights, where Emily's authorship was finally recognized, Charlotte wrote, "Whether it is right or advisable to create beings like Heathcliff, I do not know. I scarcely think it is. Wuthering Heights was hewn in a wild workshop with simple tools out of homely materials." Charlotte was the only one of the sisters to marry. She married author Bell Nichols, a curate who worked with her father and was not particularly liked in the village. I read that he inherited all of her belongings after her death, just 9 months after their marriage. Perhaps marriage didn't suit her after all. He later moved back to his native Ireland and married his cousin. The Honorsfeld Library acquired many of the manuscripts and effects in his possession, so that gave me a spark of hope that I might find some clue there on my visit the following day. I decided to dine at the inn, which was only a short walk from my lodgings. I ordered a hearty shepherd's pie and sat by the window, drinking a small glass of gin as an aperitif. I spoke briefly to the landlord, who seemed well versed on all things Bronte. They were starting to make quite a bit of money out of visitors to the parsonage and saw it as their civic duty to fill tourists in on whatever the museum's curator left out. I sat there, reading Elizabeth Gaskell's biography of Charlotte Bronte. Unfortunately, all that was known about Emily could scarcely fill a page. There was, however, mention of Martha Brown, the maid who worked at the parsonage. As the landlord's son cleared my dish and wiped down the table, I ordered another drink and asked if he knew anything about her family, being from the era. "Oh, aye, the sexton's daughter. She never married," he said, in a way that sounded so desperately forlorn. I gulped a mouthful of gin. Why was marriage always seen as the key to happiness? "So there was no family to look after her when she got sick," he continued in his relentless character assassination of the unmarried woman. "I think she died alone in a small cottage." I took another gulp of gin. My future suddenly looked quite grim. "It says here in my book that she inherited quite a bit of Bronte family memorabilia. I wonder if she had any other relatives she might have passed it on to." "My Uncle John went to school with one of her nephews, as it happens." I clapped my hands. It felt like I was on a trail. "Can I speak with him? Your uncle?" "He died this past year." "Oh, I am very sorry to hear that," I said, keeping my hands clasped as though in prayer for his soul. "I do remember him saying that the two brothers had a bookshop down in London. One of them still lives there. Maybe you could inquire there." "Oh, wonderful. Do you have the name?" He looked heavenward for inspiration. "Brown's Bookshop?" "Quite," I said, handing him some coins for my meal before walking back to my accommodation. My appointment was at 9 a.m. to study the collection at Honorsfeld. Mr. Law was away on business, so his assistant, a very diligent young woman by the name of Miss Pritchett, welcomed me. While the estate was vast and his wealth evident, the house retained a practical atmosphere. One wing was entirely devoted to the remarkable collection of British literature, with manuscripts by Robert Burns, Sir Walter Scott, and Jane Austen. "Your letter stated that you have an interest in the Bronte collection," Miss Pritchett said, opening the large wooden doors to a smaller anteroom. "I believe you'll find everything you need here," she said, handing me a catalogue of the library and a pair of soft white gloves. "Mr. Law asked that every visitor wear these. We must preserve the integrity of the paper." "Of course," I agreed, my eyes darting round the walls of shelves containing all sorts of riches, waiting to be discovered. First editions of Pride and Prejudice and Northanger Abbey, no doubt with a fascinating provenance, yet I had to pull my focus to the task at hand. With great care, I eased a first edition of Wuthering Heights from the shelf. I brought it to the table, which had a kind of easel to rest the book on. In its original cloth cover, it was in pristine condition. On the first page, I was intrigued to discover that it was inscribed by the Reverend Patrick Bronte, to none other than Martha Brown, the family housekeeper, and arguably a much valued member of their household. My senses were fizzing with connections. What else might she have been bequeathed, and where might it have ended up, if not sold at auction? There were many boxes containing entertaining yet inconsequential letters between the sisters and Ellen Nussey, along with more interesting correspondence between Charlotte and her erstwhile biographer, Elizabeth Gaskell. Then things became more interesting. I found a letter from Charlotte to her own publishers complaining about Thomas Cawtrey, Newby, the man who published Wuthering Heights and Agnes Grey. He was a bit of a scoundrel by all accounts, demanding the sisters pay €50 up front and capitalizing on the confusion surrounding the Bell name. The theory at the time was that all three books were authored by one man. Of course, it could not have been further from the truth, as Charlotte and Anne traveled to London to confirm. We are three sisters, yet Emily remained at home and seemed to prefer the anonymity of a nom de plume. Unlike her sisters, she did not seek recognition from the London literary set, nor did she seem perturbed by Cotley's greedy character. Perhaps she understood that he was true to his nature as she was to hers. I noticed the letter without any address and scanned it rather quickly, as my stomach rumbled, yearning for food. The words caused time itself to stop. London, 15 February 1848. Dear Sir, I am much obliged by your kind note and shall have great pleasure in making arrangements for your next novel. I would not hurry its completion, for I think you are quite right not to let it go before the world until well satisfied with it, for much depends on your new work. If it be an improvement on your first, you will have established yourself as a first-rate novelist. But if it falls short, the critics will be too apt to say that you have expended your talent in your first novel. I shall, therefore, have pleasure in accepting it upon the understanding that its completion be at your own time. Believe me, my dear sir, yours sincerely, T.C. Newby. I sat there, blinking at the words in front of me. Your next novel. Here it is. Here it was, irrefutable proof that Emily or Ellis Bell had begun working on a second manuscript. There was no record of the kind note she had sent, but there was evidently some hesitation on her part in rushing its publication. Perhaps she was already unwell and felt herself unequal to the task, or was it more likely that, being a perfectionist, she wished to take more time to complete it? My head buzzed with excitement. I looked at the entry in the catalog for further explanation. Letter from T.C. Newby found in Emily's writing desk with an accompanying envelope addressed simply to Acton Bell. But I knew it couldn't have been meant for Anne, for her second novel had already been submitted for publication. No, this was a correspondence with Emily regarding her follow-up to Wuthering Heights. I knew it. I sat back in my chair and looked out the long sash windows to the garden. If Charlotte had destroyed Emily's papers following her death, I would never find the manuscript. My hopes rose and fell with each contradictory argument. Then I saw something I never would have predicted in a million years. Walking up the drive to the house was a man I was sure I would not see again, Armand Hassan. What on earth are you doing here? I said, standing in the entrance hall and blocking Miss Pritchett's way. Opaline. He simply said my name, and all came flooding back. Paris, his apartment, the touch of his lips on my skin, the scent of hair wax. It was intoxicating. He looked deeply into my eyes until I broke my gaze. I thought I had put my feelings for him far behind me, but seeing him again, I realized I had merely hidden them. All of the longing and the hurt were still there, as strong as ever. He took my hand and kissed my wrist, then still holding it, moved closer and kissed me on the cheek. Miss Pritchett began to clear her throat behind me. Mr. Hassan, is it? She asked. I have the books you wish to view set up in the drawing room. I stood back and let them discuss their business. I couldn't help but watch him. He was dressed impeccably, as always, in cream linen trousers and a navy sports jacket. His skin was rich and darker now, thanks to his travels, no doubt. His hair shone like onyx, and it was all I could do not to reach out and touch it. I'm here to view some illustrations for a client. However, I'm attending an auction in Sotheby's tomorrow afternoon, if that is of interest to you. Sotheby's, I repeated, failing to keep all the excitement from my voice. I couldn't possibly go. It was too risky to go to London. My smile crumpled. No, I must return to Ireland. He looked at me as though he was searching for memories in my eyes. I looked away. You still wear my necklace, I see. My hand instinctively went to touch the golden Hamza pendant he had given me on my departure from Paris. A brief smile came to my lips, unbidden. Of course, I should have refused him, but I told myself that I needed news of Paris and Sylvia. Then he was one of the few friends I had left, that without his help I would probably be back in London now, entrapped in an arranged marriage. Well, maybe it wouldn't hurt, I said. How wrong I was. Okay, this is a long chapter. He held open the door of a gleaming black car. If I didn't know better, I would say that he had come into some money, but it was too vulgar to ask. My client, he said, replying to my unspoken question, she is quite generous. She. I looked out of the window, concealing the prickle of jealousy that pierced me. It had been several months since our time together in Paris. How could I still feel this way? I am so very glad to see you, Opaline. Many times I've wondered about you. And yet, he had never sent a letter. Are you still in Dublin? Of course, I replied, quite terse. Where else could I be? Did he expect me to have traveled the world, finding a lover in every port like him? I sulked for much of the journey and wondered why I had bothered to go at all. We pulled up to a busy and grimy street full of 18th century houses and shops, with trams trundling past at one end and the buses of High Holborn at the other. I thought we were going to Sotheby's, I said, looking around and pulling my cap down to hide my face. I had decided to dress head to toe in men's clothing, with my giant overcoat concealing my form. Just a quick stop. I think you'll enjoy it. Are you always so enigmatic? I asked, as if I wasn't charmed by it. He knew how to reel people in, women more specifically. We stood in front of a tiny bookshop with the unusual or the usual dusty barrows of unsellable stock outside. Next door to a junk shop, it had an old-style window divided into tiny square panes. There I spotted a sign. These are the only dirty books we have. Please do not waste time asking for others. What in heavens? I looked up and saw the name reprinted above the door. The Progressive Bookshop, 68 Red Lion Street. Shall we? Armand held the door open for me. I wasn't sure what kind of den of iniquity we were entering, but I had a wonderful sense that we were going to find something out of the ordinary. A nervous-looking fellow of similar vintage to ourselves was kneeling on the floor with his head halfway inside a cardboard box, quietly muttering expletives as he searched for something within. I understand you're distributing works that breach the British obscenity law, Armand said in what was quite a passable London accent. The man jumped up and propelled his wiry frame towards us with such haste that I took a step backwards, which was quite a feat in itself, as the shop left little room to maneuver. Armand Hassan, you bastard, he cried, which caused Armand to smile broadly, and then both men hugged like long-lost brothers reunited. I knew it was you, he said with a slight German accent, laughing. Herr Lahr, may I present my colleague, Mademoiselle Opaline? Gray, I interrupted, Miss Gray, and I offered my hand. Fruit meat, he said, which I interpreted as a good thing. He offered to make us some coffee, but Armand declined, saying that we didn't have much time before the auction. I have your copy here. Price is agreed. I must cover myself for any legal repercussions, you understand. Of course, said Armand. My client is very eager to have it. My curiosity was almost a fourth presence in the room. When he handed over the small rectangle wrapped in brown paper and Armand began to count out the notes, I asked if I might open it. Why not? Armand replied. I unwrapped it slowly, tantalizingly, and saw the title, Lady Charlotte Shatterley's Lover. D.H. Lawrence, Armand confirmed. The man is a literary genius, and yet we must sell his books illegally like this, Herr Lahr opined. I wanted a copy very badly. I wanted 20, yet I was aware of how selling such controversial literature might bring unwelcome attention to my little shop. But I simply had to read it, and so I negotiated a price with him for a copy of my own before we drove to Sotheby's, carrying our prohibited literature on the back seat. Through Sotheby's dark passages, an excited throng tumbled into the large auction gallery, sweeping us both along with them. Armand took my hand and led me to a little alcove at the side of the room, where we stood pressed up against each other in the wall. For one heady moment, I inhaled his scent and again was transported back to that night in the heat of his body. I coughed several times and tried to count the number of people in the room to distract myself. Gosh, what a scene. I wonder what is up for auction. You did not see the catalog? Is it the original manuscript of Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland? Good grief! Armand borrowed a leaflet from a man who was seated beside us and handed it to me. A Christmas gift to a dear child in memory of a summer day. I had simply adored his book as a child and was surprised to learn that Charles Dodgson Lewis Carroll, a mathematician at Oxford, had lovingly penned and illustrated the little book in 1864 as a gift to the Liddell family. The story went that on a boat trip down the Thames, he first told his surreal story of his to the daughters of the Dean, Henry Liddell. Eventually, he was persuaded to publish the book, and the rest was history. This is fascinating, I said, having completely forgotten my ardent thoughts of a moment earlier. These are rumors that the bidding could exceed 10,000 pounds. Barely noticed in the crowd was a small elderly woman in a black dress. Armand pointed her out as Alice Liddell Hargreaves. I turned to him and said, You don't mean... It couldn't be. He nodded, gratified by being the one in the know. She is the original Alice. She held on to the manuscript all this time, but since the death of her husband, she has been drowning in tax bills. Not Reginald Hargreaves, the cricketer. They were a high-profile couple in London society, and must have pained her greatly to put the manuscripts up for auction. She sat at the very front, her head erect and her pride intact. The bidding began hesitantly, as it often does, while the buyers get the measure of each other. There's a certain amount of poker playing in the auction room, and no one wished to show their hand too soon. 8,500 to the man in the alcove, announced the auctioneer, as I felt Armand's hand go up. You never said you were bidding, I whispered. On behalf of a client, he said, always with that mysterious air. Another wealthy client, he seemed to collect them like snowdrops in springtime. As the bidding rose higher and higher, attention focused on a short, well-dressed man with an unmistakable air of authority. 15,000 pounds, he announced in a strong American accent, as though to bring this charade to a close. Who's that? I asked. Merde, that my dear Opaline in the terror of the auction room. The gavel came down with a decisive bang, and the tense silence shattered into a cacophony of voices, some in wonderment, most aghast that such a quintessential English work was now lost to an American. The man wiped his glasses as some bidders went to congratulate him. He has outbid me at every auction this year, Armand said in a thorny tone that suggested begrudging admiration for the man. As we passed by him on our way out of the room, the two men nodded to each other. Mr. Hassan, tell the Baroness she will have to do better next time. Armand bristled at his gloating and attempted to bustle me out of the room. And who is your companion? Are you not going to introduce us? Abe Rosenbach, may I present Mademoiselle Gray? I interrupted him again. I'm a book dealer from Ireland, I said, loving how that sounded. Is that so? Here, let me give you my card, he said, procuring one from his pocket. You never know when we might do business together. He had a smile heavily laden with innuendo that I tried to ignore. Congratulations on your acquisition, Mr. Rosenbach. Thank you, Miss Gray, but this is not simply an acquisition. I have wanted this manuscript for a very long time. You see, it was the book my dear departed mother read to me when I lay ill in bed with chicken pox. I suppose with my fever I had a fancy that she was telling me a story about her childhood. I thought she was Alice. She died shortly afterwards, and I've read this book every night since. I was almost moved to tears by his story. Even Armand seemed affected. Ha! Don't be ridiculous, Rosenbach bellowed. Never trust a book dealer who lets sentimentality get in his way. I had to own it because there's only one of it in the world. That's all there is to it. If I own it, then no one else can. I have known men to hazard their fortunes, go on long journeys halfway about the world, forget friendships, even lie, cheat, and steal, all for the gain of a book. Mr. Rosenbach, you have me completely fooled, I said, annoyed at having been lured in by his tale. Apologies, my dear, I couldn't resist. After love, book collecting is the most exhilarating sport of all. What a cad, I whispered to Armand as we left the auction room, but he did not answer. They were made of the same stuff, Rosenbach and he. They felt no guilt, no remorse, and would do whatever it took to get what they wanted. It frightened and fascinated me in equal measure, like standing too close to a flame and hoping that I would not be consumed by its heat. Okay, so we ended on page 171, chapter 23, Martha. Okay, so I think we're about almost halfway through. This part is, I don't know, a little bit boring to me, but I guess it's a necessary part of the book. And there's going to be a story to it, but I do like the romance involved. I feel like it's what I need in a book is like the romance part, and like after all, love is what makes the world go round, I say. But thank you guys for being very patient with me. I gotta say, this our bed will be packed tonight, so we will be on an air mattress. So tomorrow I will be in a whole nother realm. But thank you guys for being here, and I'm glad. I hope you are enjoying the book. I just want to get past this part and I guess more romance. I don't know. Or more of the magical stuff happening at the bookshop. Like, that's really fun. Okay, but anyway, I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.